You're listening to the Zine Collector Podcast, Episode 7, 7 Tips for Finding Inspiration. Hello, zine friends. Welcome to the Zine Collector. I'm your host, Jaime Nyx. Let's talk about zines, or, ramble on a little bit before talking about zines, which is the usual way, isn't it? I think so. It's been a while, but it hasn't been that long. So, yes, I'm back. I am back, and I appreciate all of the support and lovely people saying nice things while I had a brief stay away. Now, if you know me, you know that I am against stigmas on mental health, so I will openly and freely say that I did an inpatient anxiety program, and it was in Adelaide, and inpatient meant that I couldn't just pop back home because Adelaide is a little bit of a distance away, so that is why there was the delay. And I wasn't actually sure I was going to be able to do this on time, but what can I say? I like the podcast. I like talking about zines and that sort of thing. So here I am. If I'm a little bit rusty, that's why. 2 weeks away. It was very much away from the world at large, really. So it's definitely an experience in a lot of ways. And yeah, I'll probably make a zine about that. That's for sure. And yeah, basically, I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be talking to you. It's weird to be in there and feel your perspectives changing. It's like your brain's rewiring and you know what's happening and stuff like that. And it's definitely a good thing. It's good to be back home, but it's also different to have this slightly different perspective on life and how I'm living it and how I treat myself and that sort of thing. While I did go in for anxiety issues, I learned so much about so many things about myself and how basically I haven't really been treating myself well and that sort of thing. And so things are definitely going to change. On that note, I really appreciate the support and understanding over just I know it's 1 week, but it was still a delay when I had committed to once a fortnight, and I don't like changing my commitments or anything, but I do know now that I do need to take breaks and things like that. So there may be breaks in the future, but of course I will always be very open about and warn you in advance if there are any breaks. But I am rambling quite a bit already, and it's a podcast and everything, so I'll be forgiving of myself. But let's talk about zine related things. Of course, if you have any questions about anything, again, I'm probably going to make a zine about the whole experience. And yeah, if you want to know something, let me know. Just it gives me direction to go in, basically. So yeah, good to be back. Miss doing this, even though I don't know how I was going to end that sentence. So I'll keep going. I missed all this, even the awkwardness of my rambling. So yeah, that's basically it. I don't really have any notes or announcements beyond that. So let's just get into zine events. What's happening around the world? Around the world this fortnight. I only do the zine events about a fortnight in advance, if you hadn't picked up on that already. So, zine events. We do have quite a few. Now, excuse me, all of these, the next 4, 5, 6, oh goodness, okay. So a lot of things are happening on April 14th, so be prepared. Okay, in Boston, Massachusetts, again on April 14th, we have the Feminist Zine Festival in support of Planned Parenthood. In Salt Lake City, Utah, also on the 14th, we have Grid Zine Fest. Also on April 14th in Omaha, Nebraska, we have the Omaha Zine Fest. At least I think that's Nebraska. It's been a while. but I'm pretty sure NE is Nebraska. But don't quote me on that because I'm not entirely sure. It's been a while. And we in Santa Fe on the same day, we have the Santa Fe Zine Fest. Gosh, it is the weekend for Zine Fest in the States. That's fantastic. Well, I mean, maybe not if you wanted to go to each and every single one of them, but, you know, teleporting, we got to get on that, right? On April 14th and 15th in Santiago, Chile, we have something I'm probably going to completely butcher if I try to say it, but basically it's a fanzines event happening in Santiago, Chile over the weekend of the 14th and 15th. Also over the weekend of the 14th and 15th, I think it's the weekend, I just realized that I didn't check that, but 14th and 15th in Glasgow, we have the Glasgow Zine Fest. Oh, I would love to do that. One of those bucket list places to visit. On April 16th in Northampton, Massachusetts, we have the Forbes Library Zine Club. On April 21st in Michigan City, Indiana, we have the Zine and Small Press Fest. Oh, I like that. Press Fest. Fun to say. On April 21st and 22nd in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we have the New Zealand... Doing really well with these. Gosh. On April 21st and 22nd in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we have the New Zealand Zine Fest. On April 22nd in Boston, Massachusetts, we have the Massachusetts Feminist Zine Fest. And on April 25th in Northampton, Massachusetts, we have the Forbes Library Zine Club again. Massachusetts, you are all over this zine thing, aren't you? That's fantastic. If you are looking to move and don't really have any particular direction to go in, go to Massachusetts. They have all kinds of zine stuff on. Please excuse my stumbling. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to edit out, but yeah. And there are a lot more events where that came from. If you'd like a direct line on zine events around the world or would like to make sure that your zine event is listed, there is the Zine World Calendar. Check out @fanzines on Twitter and Facebook. Links, as always, are in the description. Definitely a great resource, even if you can't travel to all of them. It is just lovely seeing all the things that are happening all around the world. And a lot of the time, there are so many things happening that I can't read a whole list without taking forever and ever and ever, basically. So I just pick and choose a few. No particular reason why I pick what I pick. It's just there, that sort of thing. Get it down to one page that I read and away we go. On to the main content of the show. In the last episode, I shared six? Was it 5? Of course, I can't remember because it was episode 6, but I think it was 5 tips for zine beginners. And this week, I'd like to talk something that is a little bit along those lines, kind of an elusive entity, and that is the topic of inspiration. This originally came as a question from Latibule online when I asked if anybody had any questions for the Q&A segment of the podcast. Latibule asked, what do I do for inspiration, that sort of thing, and I figured that it's such a big and complex topic that it really warranted its own episode rather than where it might have been a little bit smushed down for the Q&A segment. There is a lot to say about inspiration and ties to motivation and all sorts of things, and mental health and all sorts of things. But basically, I wanted to keep it to the list format because I really like lists. So here are my 7 tips for finding inspiration, or cultivating inspiration, or ways to put yourself in the mindset to being open to inspiration. But, obviously those aren't very catchy titles. Way too long to be a title. Anyway, so 7 tips for finding inspiration. Tip number 1, immerse yourself in what you are doing or what you'd like to be doing. In the last episode of the podcast, I talked about one of my tips for beginning zine makers is to read zines. I feel like that's a really important step for getting familiar with the zine world. But at the same time, I feel like that principle, that immerse yourself in what it is you want to do, applies to basically any creative endeavor and some non-creative endeavors as well. If you want to do a thing, there are so many different ways to approach it, and you can find inspiration in finding those related but maybe not necessarily direct sort of avenues. When I was growing up, I was very much into writing, novel writing, that sort of thing. And the one thing I heard the most is, if you want to write a book, you need to read the books, which probably informed my tip being, if you want to make zines, read zines. But again, while it definitely is obviously a zine podcast, it applies creatively. If you want to draw, check out some classes maybe. If you want to paint, try some different kinds of paints. There's oil paints and acrylic paints and that sort of thing. There's so many ways. Like, there are classes, there are, doing group activities, there are art galleries, there are libraries. There's so many ways to get familiar with and get involved in what you want to do that can feed your inspiration, that can help you feel inspired and motivated and make you feel like you really want to do the thing, but also can inform how you do the thing, how you want to do the thing, doing the thing in ways that are more along the lines of what, speaks to your soul, sort of ways. So, number one tip, definitely get involved. Get involved, have fun. I mean, maybe you'll find that a class isn't your thing, or maybe you'll find you don't like reading about, 16th century painters or something like that. That's okay. You don't have to like all of the surrounding ways of the thing, but it's all information. It's all helpful input for when you finally do the thing. I hope that makes sense. Tip number 2 for finding inspiration is always carry a notebook with you. I have been doing this for so long, it actually feels a little weird to not do it. Like, if you've been wearing a watch for a while and then don't wear a watch, it's that sort of, it feels odd for me not to have a notebook and pen with me. I think this tip is good in a general sense. Like, there's always something going on. People live very busy lives, and there's someone to call or something to add to the grocery list and that sort of thing. And carrying a notebook around can be very useful in that way. But at the same time, I feel like it's maybe not essential. Like, I don't feel like I'm in a position to say this is an absolute essential thing, but it's been essential for me in my life. Carrying a notebook around, and it doesn't have to be huge. Like, I have an A6 notebook usually. I mean, I haven't carried the same one around for however many years, but I usually just have a small notebook, fairly plain, scratch paper. Like, it's not a notebook that intimidates me. It's not a notebook that I don't want to spoil the pages or anything. It's really important for me to have a notebook that I can just scribble or scratch or whatever in it, and just, it doesn't hinder me. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming that this is a pretty common thing, that you've had that people get notebooks and they're just so pretty, you don't want to spoil the pages or anything. Don't get a notebook like that. Get a notebook, or even make a notebook that you can just carry around and scribble in and, like I said, scratch. And you're not thinking about the writing of the notebook. The notebook facilitates you writing down everything that pops into your mind. Now, the thing about carrying a notebook is, obviously carrying a notebook doesn't guarantee you inspiration. You could carry it around and just not be. But for me, carrying around a notebook says to my brain, says to the universe, if you are that way inclined in thinking, that I am open to inspiration. I have my notebook, I have my pen. I might not feel inspired by something, but I'm open to it. I am prepared to write it down. I am prepared to capture whatever inspiration floats my way. And I have found that doing that, just starting to do that, like the things flow easier. Do I write everything down? Pretty much. Do I later find that inspiring? Nah. There are so many things I've written down and gone, yeah, that, yeah, no, not going to pursue that one. But the thing is, I'm writing it down. I am inspired in the moment, at least, which is a beautiful thing in and of itself. And I'm open to it. I'm open to the world. I'm looking around. I'm listening. I'm taking it in ways that I might not be taking it in if I didn't have a notebook. If I had no way of recording it as such, other than remembering it. Like, I have enough going on in my head without having to remember what's happening, when I'm out at the grocery store or when I go out and get sushi or something, that sort of thing. Having a notebook facilitates the flow of ideas in a lovely way. So highly recommend carry a notebook with you wherever you go, even around in the house. Yes, I carry mine around in the house because I never know when things are going to pop into my head. Serious. Notebook, tip number 2. Tip number 3, get back to basics and do it by hand. Tip number 3 ties a bit into tip number 2 in that many of us have phones. They're very convenient for, notes and pictures and stuff like that. And they're very good. And I do use mine occasionally for taking pictures of things that are inspirational and whatnot. But I still carry my notebook because it has actually been shown, like research-wise, that handwriting is good for your brain. Now, I don't know for sure, but I imagine that hand sketching, that's an extension. So I want this to, it's not just the writers I'm speaking to, it's the artists as well. So by doing things by hand, you're actually, lighting up bits of your brain that you may or may not have used for quite a while. I would type all day long. I love how fast it is. I love how convenient it is. But when it comes to inspiration and brainstorming, and when I feel stuck in my novel, even the show notes for the podcast. Now, if you're listening to the podcast, you won't see this, but on the YouTube video, I'm just holding up. I write my notes. I write my speaking points and things like that because for me, there is a connection. There's a better, brain connection. It's better for my memory to handwrite than it is to type because I can remember making that tea or scribbling that out or stuff like that. There is a connection. There is memory. There's all sorts of things and things that I should have found more articles in. So I could list them out. But it has been shown that handwriting, that doing things by hand is good for your brain. When it comes down to it, writing on a piece of paper, drawing on a piece of paper, that is my default setting. It always has and it always will be. So, even when it comes to zines, I often get to this point where I need to do something by hand. Like I can type up the words, but I will print them off on adhesive paper so I can actually still do the cut and paste side of things because I need that action of doing things by hand, by cutting things by hand, that sort of level of creativity to make me feel really connected with my creative self. And it inspires me to do more. Like having done all of the pages of a zine, it's kind of a pain in the bum, in my opinion, to have to scan them all in and stuff like that. But then I've done it and I have those pages and I love just flipping through the master copies of things and it makes me happy and it makes me want to make more. And yeah, I think it just feeds the inspiration train. I wasn't going to say train, but I thought, go all in. So if you are feeling tired or disconnected or just somehow a step away from your zines or your other creative endeavors, try doing it by hand. Try doing it if you're digital, try doing it on paper, that sort of thing. Try doing it in a more basic sort of way and see if that helps inspire and reconnect you to your art. Tip number 4 for finding inspiration is find inspiring people. I don't think anybody's going to be particularly surprised by this tip from me, as I do tend to go on about how inspiring people are in a general sense. But blogs, YouTube, Pinterest, podcasts, Instagram, there are all sorts of people out there doing all sorts of things, and they're sharing it online. It's for you to find, for you to look at, for you to enjoy. There are so many cool things out there, so many cool projects. I will never have the time to do all of the projects I have on my want to do someday projects list, just because there's so much cool and fun stuff to do online. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the specific thing you're looking at. Like if you're looking at painting, if you're looking at making a zine, you don't necessarily have to stick to inspiring zine makers. You could find inspiring crafters, you can find inspiring speeches and stuff like that. Sorry, I had a little brain freeze, but I was trying to think of TED Talks, because TED Talks, and I'll have a link in the description, of course. TED Talks are so inspiring, and there are talks on all sorts of things, and it's just absolutely amazing and fascinating. And there was this one on how smart crows are and that sort of thing, and I don't do anything necessarily with crows, but just finding something that I find fascinating, it just gets me pumped up. It gets me going, it gets my energy high up, and I get ready and raring to go on what the other thing I was doing that's not related to crows. Now I really hope I can find that TED Talk and have a link in the description. But I can't remember the number of times that I've either gone to my favorite creators or found new people who have inspired me in so many different ways. Sea Lemon on YouTube pops into mind immediately as one of my favorite YouTubers, because she does so many crafty things, and there's all of her videos are like tutorials how to do the thing, and she'll update tutorials if they're not clear, and she'll update tutorials on, this is how I'm doing things, and all sorts of things. She paints and she makes notebooks, and I learned how to Coptic stitch from her videos and that sort of thing. I'm actually working on a Zines video playlist on my YouTube channel, just because I like seeing what people are saying about and doing with zines and that sort of thing. Like inspiration everywhere. And Pinterest is Pinterest. I think you may either love it or hate it, but if you want to quickly find like whole walls of inspiration posts and videos and stuff like that, like type in something there and just go with it, because wow, like plug in those search terms and surf those hashtags, and just inspiration everywhere. Tip number 5 for finding inspiration is move your body. I imagine that a lot of you are like me in that you've heard this tip before and kind of pushed it aside, like, oh, yep, that's something I should do, but never really got around to it. I personally put it in the do later box, which is the mental box where I keep all the things that I'm never really going to get around to. It took a stay in the hospital for me to realize just how much I wasn't moving. I wasn't getting out. I wasn't enjoying fresh air or trees or sunshine or that sort of thing. I'm not sure. I heard this statistic a while ago, so I'm not sure if it's currently still the thing, but Australians, for being in such a sunny country, have such a hard time with vitamin D, which is, vitamin D, sunshine, that sort of thing. We're not getting out. We're not taking it all in. And I understand that. Like I said, I was there. I was, comfortable and inside and temperature controlled and, and everything like that. But when I stayed in the hospital, I finally got to this point where I was wandering more and stuff like that. And when I did wander, and I was so ready to hug the first tree I saw. And that wasn't even very, like, at the end of the day. This is about, like, halfway through. And I got outside and I saw trees. And I'm telling you, like, this close to hugging trees. I was just so happy to be around trees, to be in fresh air, to sit on the grass, to just feel the sun on my skin. It was absolutely gorgeous. Like, I had a sneezing fit. Like, I get hay fever and allergies and stuff like that. So that's definitely, part of the, if you heard that, sorry, that's Wanderer sneezing in the background. Anyway, so I have allergies and stuff like that, and I had a sneezing fit. I had a huge sneezing fit, but it didn't, I don't want to say it didn't matter, but basically it didn't stop me, because I realized how grateful I was for the breeze and the sun warming my skin and everything like that. And I realize, and I know, and I acknowledge that outside can be a very scary thing. Like, I have been there, trust me. But it's not just about getting outside. I think a large part of it, at least for me personally, is definitely getting outside and, feeling the sun and that sort of thing. But it's also about moving, because when you're not moving, you start, shallow breathing, and shallow breathing can feed into a lot of, negative things, anxiety, etc. But start moving, just deep breaths, shoulders back, deep breath. That is moving. That's like, okay, that wasn't a great deep breath, but I wasn't meaning to do breathing exercises. But breathe, dance, stretching. Stretching feels so good. I mean, not always if you're sore and stuff. Like, I've got bursitis in my shoulders, so yeah, stretching isn't always, but stretching and moving and using your body in whatever ways you are able to can be so good, is so good for your muscles, for you, your mindset. Like, get outside if you can, of course, and just take it in, disconnect a little bit from the technology and the temperature control. And I know how comfortable it is. Believe me, it's so easy to get comfortable in whatever our current bubble is. Our current bubble may not be great, but it's our current bubble and it's what we know, and thus even discomfort can be comfortable. But the thing about that is comfort rarely feeds inspiration, and that's just the way it is. Tip number 6 for finding inspiration is refilling the well. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, that's because this tip comes courtesy of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I hope I'm pronouncing. It's Cameron, but I hope I'm not somehow saying that wrong. But yes, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, refilling the well. The core concept of this, or at least what I feel the core concept is of refilling the well, maybe not the core concept, but an important thing to take from this is that not creating is just as important as creating. Taking time away is just important as making time for. Now, I will explain myself if that's in any way confusing. I think I've made it pretty clear at this point that I really love zines. I adore zines. Like, I literally pet zines. I was going to say not in a weird way, but I don't think there is a way for that not to be weird. So I love zines, but even I need a break from reviewing and that sort of thing. That's why I'm not doing this podcast weekly, because I don't want to burn out. Even fortnightly is pushing it a little bit. Now, please don't take that the wrong way. I'm not going to be just please don't take that in a negative way. I'm trying to be honest and clear. You can have something that you absolutely adore doing, but, and I've learned this all too clearly recently, if you do that all day, every day, there is burnout. And even if you don't feel a burnout sort of thing, it's not really healthy to just do it all day, every day, that sort of thing. I mean, obviously some of us would have things that they would love to be able to just stop the other things to be able to do it all day, every day. But what I'm trying to say is that everybody needs a break. Even from zines, I will get ahead on zine reviews just so I have a couple of reviews in my pocket, and that way I can take a week off because I need that. And it's not necessarily that I feel this desperate need to have a break. It's because I don't fear, but I don't ever want to be burned out when it comes to zines. I don't want to ever feel burned out. And so I'm careful, at least in the realm of zine reviews, to not push that too hard, to take breaks for other things that I like doing, other things that make me feel relaxed or inspired or that sort of thing. Like I like PC games. I said that a little bit weird, didn't I? I like computer gaming. I like going for walks and playing with a dog and talking to Wanderer and, occasionally going out for trying a new coffee or something like that. I like working on my novel. I like watching silly shows. That sort of things that make me laugh. All of those are very important for me. It's important to take time. It sounds weird to say that it's important to take time away from the things you love, but it is important. I mean, it's important in relationships as well, to have distance as well as closeness. It's your relationships with other people are similar to your relationships with your art. And refilling the well is about doing things and filling that well of inspiration. Refilling the well comes down to taking the time, especially if you've just done a big project, to do the things you enjoy. Fill that well up with fun, with play, with love, and you'll find it also fills with energy and inspiration for what it is you want to do when you get back to doing it. I do hope that made sense. I know it was a little bit rambly and a little bit once I have my talking points, but once I get going on things, sometimes I go ways that I didn't expect. So far, I have given you 6 things to do to help find inspiration. But for number 7, the very last tip, I have something to not do to help you feel inspired. And that is tip number 7. Don't compare. Comparison is the thief of joy. That is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt that I think of whenever I start looking at people's zines and thinking, oh, they're cooler than mine, they're so much more talented than me, or they're more successful than me, or they're more skilled than me, in whatever area, that sort of thing. The list goes on and on and on. So while comparison is the thief of joy, I also see it as the destroyer of inspiration. I mean, it's hard to feel inspired if you're knocking yourself down about something that you haven't even started making yet. If you are wanting to draw something and you see someone who you feel is so skilled at drawing, like, yes, there are people who can take comparison and use that as a motivator. Like, I can do that, I can get that skilled, I can learn the skills, I can they use comparison as some sort of competitive motivation, that sort of thing. But in my own personal experience, that kind of motivation fizzles out pretty quickly, and it all too quickly becomes not motivation, but just yet another way to negative self-talk and even procrastinate. Really, it is a method of procrastination, just to sit and endlessly compare yourself and give yourself all the reasons to not do a thing. You will always have reasons to not do the thing. Like, it's not just comparison. The tip is don't compare, but you will always have a million reasons to not do the thing. You need to desire. You don't have to love. You don't always have to love, but the desire and the motivation needs to be there so you can take that list of reasons to not do the thing and put it aside. And comparison is just another one of those things. Unless it's inspiring you, like, look at things that inspire you, but when you start getting into, oh, I can't do that, when it starts becoming that negative thing, there is enough negativity in the world. There is enough of all of that, basically. There is enough without inviting more in. So look, take in, be inspired, but the moment it starts turning negative, put it away, put it aside, because it is not helping you, and you won't you won't do the thing. You won't learn the skills if you are too busy comparing yourself to someone else. So those are my 7 tips for finding inspiration. I hope you find them useful. I hope you find them inspiring. Is that not quite a pun, but kind of a pun, because is there anything I miss? Is there anything that you do or watch or anything to find inspiration, to get inspiration, to feel inspired, that sort of thing? Please let me know in the comments. If you're listening to the podcast, you can go onto the blog and leave a comment there, or go onto YouTube and find the video and leave a comment there. Or if you're on YouTube, comment section below. That sort of thing. But yeah, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for inspiration. If you know of zine videos I can add to the zine playlist, that'd definitely be welcome. All sorts of things. Now we come to the Q&A section of the podcast, where I answer one question each episode. Questions from you, or frequently asked questions. Either one. And it hasn't quite been every episode so far, but working on it. Getting back into the swing of things. This week's question is, are you up for trades? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I love trades. I love zine trades. I highly encourage people to do zine trades. I feel like it's a really important part of zine culture, and it's something that I really don't want to see go by the wayside, even though postage costs are postage costs. I love trading for all sorts of things. I like perzines and self-help and health, especially women's health, reproductive health. I like educational. I like learning about things. I greatly appreciate anything like humorous, anything that makes me laugh, makes me smile. It's really, a special little part of my heart, or anything that can make me smile. So yes, I'm up for trades. If I'm not up for trades, the only thing that really stops me is overseas postage costs. They can be difficult, but again, it's not so much not being up for trades. It's more like a delayed trade sort of thing, that I might need a while to save up for the costs. But yeah, definitely don't be shy, get in contact. So yes, I'm up for trades. If you have any questions about zines, zine reviewing, me, that sort of thing, feel free to send a question. I'm on Tumblr, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, that sort of thing. Those aren't listed in preference. I just always think of Tumblr because Tumblr is where you can ask anonymous questions. So yeah, I am around. I am on various platforms. So if there's anything you'd like to know, just let me know and I will put it in an episode. Next up, we have Sharing is Caring, which is my little non-sponsored segment where I share something I love that is out happening in the zine-verse. And this week, it is my pleasure to let you know about It's Pronounced Zine. Wow, this is one of those things that I could swear that I must have already done this in Sharing is Caring. So if I have, like, I checked over and I am nearly absolutely convinced that I haven't already done this, but there's always a chance. So sorry if this is a repeat, but it's my pleasure to talk about It's Pronounced Zine. It's Pronounced Zine is a podcast presented by Meltdown Comics in Los Angeles and is hosted by the amazing, very skilled Dave Baker. It's been going since, I believe, June 2016. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's when it started. And it has well over 30 episodes. I think they're coming up to 40, but again, don't quote me. I had to do a lot of research on my phone. That sort of thing. Dave Baker is a very funny, energetic host who interviews all sorts of people involved in zines, comics, all those scenes and stuff like that, up and down West Coast, that sort of thing, of the States, obviously. There is a strong leaning towards the comics side of things, but A, not complaining, and B, there is still so much zine love, a lot of Zine Fest talk, that sort of thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love listening to it. I've been listening to it since, oh gosh, it's been a while. It's been very inspiring for me. It's great. Check it out. Have a listen. The interviews do tend to be on the longer side, but that is definitely a great way to while away an afternoon or have something to listen to on a long walk or a long ride home or something like that. Anything like that. Definitely check it out. It's fun. Dave talks to a lot of interesting people, and now I want all of the things Dave makes and all of the things that all of the people Dave talks to make. I've met a lot of great people thanks to listening to the podcast and then following their social media links as well. So that has been a very good experience, a great way to connect with people. So definitely check it out. It's Pronounced Zine. Links will be in the description. But you can look up It's Pronounced Zine. It's on iTunes and I think Blog Talk Radio, and Meltdown Comics actually has a website which has posts for the interviews and all sorts of things. So I listen to it on Pocket Casts, I believe. I have a few different things now, but Well, that is it for today, Zine friends. Thank you again so much for joining me, for listening. All the comments that have been coming in have been so fantastic and made me feel so good and inspired me to keep pushing forward. And it's not always easy with the things that you love, but it helps to have such wonderful people and suggestions coming in. Like, I have such a long list of show suggestions, so we're definitely going to keep going for a while, that's for sure. Remember that everything I say is just my opinion. There are no gatekeepers in the Zineverse, nor should there be. Links to everything I talked about today are in the description. They're always in the description. I do listen to the podcast through to try to make sure I catch every name, every link, that sort of thing. Be sure to stop by seagreenzines.com where I review zines every Thursday and Friday. The music for this podcast, Spanish Summer by Audionautics, is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution License. This is the Zine Collector. I'm your host, Jaime Nyx. Until next time, go make some zines. Mwah. I don't know what to put in this spot. I don't know what to put in this spot. Oh, she's back.